Welcome to the second part of Essential Architecture series. In the last lesson, we did this particular oil. And did you guess what it is? First, I'm going to show you what it is that we did. So we looked at this oil, and the reason I chose it for the very first one is because it is so simple. It has a lot of monoterpenes, over 95%, and particularly very rich in limonene. So not to go back into why that is important, but just why I chose that as a first one is because it is simple as in one group. So it's very predictable that way, and simple as in one component that is almost 95% of the entire oil. And so it gives us a lot of ideas on how to use it just by knowing about limonene. Also, a reminder, don't get discouraged or intimidated by words like, chemical constituents and these are just terms. We are not going to do any formulas. So this oil we then saw has some research. It's one that we are familiar with, and the oil is grapefruit. So the reason I chose grapefruit is because everybody knows about it. Probably you had it in your collection at some point, or at least smelled it, but we don't use it as much as we do other oils. Also, it is not written in books as much as others. So if we look at the stuff that we found, it's not nearly as much as you'll find on lemon or sweet orange, okay? And then this really shines through because you have so many more ideas on how to use this oil. So if you want to freshen up, go and check out the first lesson, and it is grapefruit. But now I want to build. That's why I call it architecture, because we can build. Once we understand the building blocks, we can put them together very easily. So I wanted to introduce you to monoterpenes because they're the smallest. They're in hundreds of different oils, so it will be easy for you to go to the next one. So the next oil, again, I'm not going to tell you which one it is. As you see, it has a lot of monoterpenes as well, but it has this chunk of sesquiterpenes. So we're getting familiar with the colors as well. I needed to create colors for me to be able to put the data somehow in my brain because I'm a visual person. So whenever you see a lot of orange, they're monoterpenes, but when you see green, it is everything else. So it's usually sesquiterpenes, but it can also be diterpenes or aromatic hydrocarbons, which is so rare. But just so you know, if it's green, it could be something other than, it's a hydrocarbon that is not monoterpene. But mainly with essential oils, when we have a bigger molecule, it is sesquiterpenes. So how do we talk about this essential oil without knowing anything about it? So I don't know what name it is. I don't know how it smells. I never touched the bottle. Somebody just pops this at me and wants me to talk about it very intelligently and professionally. So what can we do? We can do it to start the same way as last time to see how much you actually remember. And we can say, so this essential oil has over 50% of monoterpenes, which is going to tell me the same thing as last time, so that it's going to oxidate faster. So I have to monitor its shelf life. Remember also that we said that these kind of oils, because they oxidate fast, can be sensitize the skin. So this oil, I have to look out for that it can sensitize the skin, but because it's oxidized, not because it is going to damage the skin as a phenol would, which we're going to talk in the next lesson. So This oil is okay for skin. I just have to watch out because this more than half of it has monoterpenes, so it can oxidize. Now, if we're looking at the smell, I chose this one because it's so tricky. And this is where I would love to open up the conversation about the smell of essential oils and the notes. I have noticed that a lot in aromatherapy, we put notes to an essential oil. We're learning that this oil has this note, and that is very useful when we're blending because we want to have all three notes. But in then when I started digging up this knowledge, I understood that in practical terms, most essential oils are already a cocktail or already have notes, different notes. So this is a perfect example for that because monoterpenes are a high note, if you remember from last time, and they're going to evaporate quickly. We're going to smell them for a short time. They're also very not intense smell. So that's another thing I would like for people to understand. Just because something is a high note does not make it an intense note. And just because something is an intense note does not make it a high note. Like peppermint, for example. Peppermint has a very intense note, but it is not a high note. And a lot of people put peppermint as a high note because it's so intense in the smell. So those are two different characteristics, two different things about the smell. So you have the intensity of the note of the smell, and then you have the note. Is it high, middle, or low note? And monoterpenes have low intensity and a high note. So a high note tells us it's the first thing we're going to smell. And the low intensity tells us that when we blend it, we have to be careful that the smell comes through. So remember with the grapefruit here, I said that with this kind of oils that look like this, and similar is lemon or any citrus almost. The thing is, if I'm going to blend this with a geranium or a lavender, if it's one drop each, we're not going to really smell it. We're going to need 3 or maybe even 5 drops to smell it. So this oil also, at least half of it, it's very light. It's going to be quickly run over by another oil and by this part of the oil. Now, when we look at sesquiterpenes are lower. Now, and I double checked this before this presentation, but most components that you're going to find in essential oils are not the typical base note. So sesquiterpenes, when you see them in essential oils, they are going to be counted as low notes, but actually they're middle to low. But for aromatherapy purposes, let's say that this is a low note. So I chose this essential oil because it's so interesting. Do you see? We have a high note and a low note and no middle note. So the reason I wanted to introduce this, it's because when you are going to be speaking about an oil like this, there's going to be a lot of contradictory information because somebody's going to call it a high note, somebody's going to call it a low note. Most people are actually going to call it a middle note because it has high and low, and that is the worst because there is no middle note here at all. But the power of knowing the architecture of essential oils is that armed with this information, you can answer any question. So you can introduce it. So we said, again, I'm speaking about this oil and I'm going to say, this oil has a lot of monoterpenes, high note, and all of this that we already said with the safety issues. However, I see that over 30 to 40% we have sesquiterpenes, which are low note. And this makes this oil so interesting because it will last longer, the smell. And also it tells me right away that I want to blend it with something that has a middle note. So this oil could blend really nicely with something like lavender, for example, because everybody knows lavender, right? You can choose another oil that has a nice middle note. But definitely this oil is another oil that I would blend because it's missing that middle note, and it's very important when we are creating a harmonious blend. Now, if I'm going to go into explaining how to use this for some beneficial, therapeutically beneficial things, you might want to look into monoterpenes. And here we come into trouble because there's a lot of monoterpenes. Yes, we can talk about limonene, but it's not even 20%. So that's why Dropsmart comes in really well because it calculates it for you. But we're going to come back to that. What I want to show you is that you do have a lot of beta-caryophyllene. It's 20%. And beta-caryophyllene is such an interesting chemical constituent. Another scary word. So 2 in one sentence. Can you even pronounce it? Beta-caryophyllene is an interesting constituent. Don't I sound just smart? So it's just words. So beta-caryophyllene is a name of this particular constituent, which maybe you are familiar with because it's been talked a lot in the last 5 years. And it is in copaiba. So copaiba is another beautiful oil that has been popularized last 5-7 years. And it has been so popular because it is mainly made out of beta-caryophyllene. It has like 90% or more, depending on the oil you're using. And it has a lot of research on great anti-inflammatory properties and analgesic. So it's mainly known for those benefits. That it's great for different kind of pain, for relieving I want to say inflammation, but inflammation, and also like skin inflammation. So beta-caryophyllene is very good for different skin inflammation, skin problems. However, one thing that is not talked about, and I love to point it out with beta-caryophyllene because it will come handy to you, it's that it has antiviral, but a specific antiviral effect on the cold sore. So I find it very, very useful because other oils that we use for cold sore could be irritating. And this one is such a great soothing chemical constituent. I'm talking about the constituent itself, okay? You can see immunomodulatory, so a lot of repellent. So this chemical constituent in particular, I wanted to talk about because it's such an interesting one, such a useful one to bring out some things that people don't know about it. So if you understand, if you choose a couple of chemical constituents to play with, I would say this is one to pay attention to. And you see that here, out of this 34%, so over 20 is beta-caryophyllene. So it will tell me that this oil has great potential to do some of these things that we mentioned. And once you calculate it in with these monoterpenes, you will see here that antiviral, for example, is almost 70%. So coming back to how I'm going to read this essential oil and explain it to somebody without knowing anything about it, I will say, by looking at how the chemical constituents in this essential oil come together, so when they add up, we will see that we have over 80% of anti-inflammatory because all of these little guys added up. We don't have like last time that we can say, oh, it's just this particular chemical constituent, but we have a bunch of them that add up as anti-inflammatory. That tells me it could be for inflammatory things on skin, but also in different ones as well, like pain. It has great antimicrobial action, specifically antibacterial, because of these constituents here. Antiviral, like I said already, we mentioned a few of those. Antispasmodic, antidoceptive, analgesic. So see what a great combination. When I see this combination, anti-inflammatory, antispasmodic, and analgesic, and all of these are great for pain relief. So this oil, looking at what I see here, I would recommend it definitely for different pains. So whether it's for rheumatic pain, whether it's for some kind of cramps, because we see that it's also antispasmodic, whether it's for muscle pain. I think this would be a great oil for different kinds of pains. And as you see, all of this antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral tells me that it's great for different kinds of infections. So I would definitely recommend this oil to be used for perhaps respiratory problems. I could use it in the air. I would add a middle note though. This oil doesn't seem to look like it will be intense because beta-caryophyllene is also very, not such an overpowering odor. So this oil is not probably that intense in its smell. And we have some great repellent action here. So it could be used for all of those pests. Penetration enhancer almost 50%. So very, very interesting things we can do with it. So if we now take a look at what we can talk about it when we know about oil. So this is if you don't know anything about the oil. This is what the books and the science is going to tell you. Okay, so let's see if it lines up. Safety so far lines up. See? Do you see how it's almost magical? I mean, skin sensitization epoxidize. And now you know why. It's very simple. It's because of this. It's because of that area here. So I didn't need a book to tell me that. I could just look at the oil. When you look at scientific properties, they do add up. But this is why I always look more at the individual chemical constituents, how they add up, rather than just looking at the scientific properties of the oil, because not as much research has been done on single essential oils, unless it's like a tea tree or lavender or eucalyptus. Those have a lot of research, but most other ones have little. So obviously this is another oil all of you know and heard of. See, repellent, we have antibacterial, antifungal, but a lot of this is missing. Do you see? You have more information here that it's a great antispasmodic, analgesic, even anti-inflammatory. Not here. And when we look at how to use it, infection, arthritis, it does align with what I said, with different kind of infections, respiratory infections, and different kind of pain. Here it talks a lot about digestive conditions, and you will see when you see which oil it is. Maybe now you have better ideas. Menstrual cramps, that makes sense. Remember, we saw that it has the this one here, antispasmodic. So it makes sense that it's recommended for different kinds of cramps. Joint pain makes absolute sense because we looked at all of these properties here. Again, so different kinds of pain. Today, I decided to show you which oil it is, but I'm going to give you one more chance to guess it. Anybody? And the oil is Black pepper. Black pepper. So I wanted to show you today which one it is, because you will see that a lot of things in essential oil profiles are often connected to the story behind it. And black pepper is a spice. So naturally, people assume black pepper essential oil is spicy and it's powerful, as in that it actually can damage the skin and that it's connected to digestive system. So we often, when we see essential oils that are spices, we put them in that category. And I wanted to show it backwards so that you can understand that black pepper is a very useful and quite safe essential oil, actually. It's not spicy in the way that like cinnamon or clove is. It's not a phenol. It's not going to burn your skin. It might sensitize it, but only because of monoterpenes. So it's actually going to sensitize your skin less than some citrus. It's safer to use for skin than a citrus, but often because it is a spice, people throw all the spices in the same category. So I wanted to revive black pepper and show you that it's such a wonderful oil to use for so many things, and especially pain. So now you might be a little more informed on why it's so recommended for pain. It's not because it's spicy, it's because it has great analgesic properties from all of these lovely constituents that we're getting familiar with. Also, look, this middle top note. And it's something that we have trouble in Dropsmart because we have to respect how the the person whose oil it is, so the distiller wants to describe it, and they want to describe it as middle top. And it's really hard to describe this note anyway, because, as we said, it doesn't have the middle note. It has the bottom and the top one. So how would you even explain it? And I would like to introduce with this aromatherapy architecture series also the conversation of maybe we need a different system to define it. And I would really love to encourage everybody to start looking at essential oils as a blend, because that will make it easier. It will make it easier to look at the essential oil as a blend. And then you will see, do you actually need to add anything to this blend? Because that is what the essential oil is. It's a blend of all of this, all of these beautiful words that we don't like to pronounce. And each of those chemical constituents has a ton of properties. So it's really a cocktail. And I would like to invite you to start thinking in those terms and percentages. So let's not be afraid of some strange names and numbers here, because it's only counting until 100. We add it up to 100%. And but it gives us so much more insight on how to use essential oils more balanced in the smell, more balanced in harmony of how they come together, and how actually, all these properties blend together, add up. And it's beautiful to see that this oil has so many chemical constituents working as analgesics, for example, because they're working from different angles. So if we look at the oil we did last time, because most of it is limonene, right? It's mainly looking at that problem from one angle. Like 95% of the power comes from the same direction. Whereas with oils that get a little more complex in their chemistry, it also gets a little more complex on how it is dealing with the problem. So I really love that. I really love that I have more chemical constituents working on the same problem. And I think that's powerful. It also tells me that I might not want to blend this oil too much. I just want to add to the black pepper the middle note. I don't need to add too much. I will definitely not blend black pepper with a citrus unless it's just for a smell, because I already cover that. I already cover everything the citrus can offer right here. I covered that. So I would not blend it unless I want to freshen up the smell. So that's the oil of the day. And next time, we're going to look at this one. So we're going to continue with sesquiterpene, so I can tell you a little bit more about how to read that without knowing what oil it is. And we're going to go into these guys here, phenols. So thank you for your attention.